pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. Here I am with another page 112 tag. This is the newest variation that I've come up with. It's the book haul version. The last one that I did a couple weeks ago, people seem to enjoy it, so for the time being I'm going to do all my book hauling through the page 112 tag. I have another batch of 3 books that I have recently acquired, and I'm going to sample page 112 to you, totally blind for you, the viewer. I know what they are, of course, but I won't tell you until the end. I'm going to read page 112 to you. I'm going to give my reaction to page 112, but of course you understand that I have a lot of other information about the title, the author, maybe other books I've read or book reviews I've read of these books that you don't have. But I'm going to try to give you my reaction simply focused on page 112 only. And you will also be assessing each of these books on their page 112s. At the end, I'm going to rank them in terms of the ones that strike me as the most interesting to the least interesting, and then I will tell you what the books are. The page 112 tag has been around a while. I created it 5 months ago. There's a long description in the show notes. I'm not going to waste anybody's time by explaining it more than that. So let's get started. Book number 1, page 112, happens to be the beginning of chapter 8. The following Friday, after a week of sleepless nights and uncertainty, Nick leaves the office early. He nods goodbye to Madeline, the German receptionist, who's already shutting windows, switching off lights, setting the alarm. It's usually his job to be the last out. Handing over the responsibility to someone else makes him nervous. He heads up the emptying high street, past Poundland, Lloyd's Bank, Argos, to the library. He hasn't stepped inside a library for a very long time, and he's disconcerted by the presence of so many computers. He feels better once he's located the bookshelves, grateful for their familiarity, and spends a little time walking up and down between the shelves, studying the headings, approving of their neatly notated reference numbers. He occasionally stops to move books around and put them in the correct order. But he hasn't come for the books. Eventually, he approaches the desk where 2 librarians sit silently, studying computer screens. Neither of them seems aware of his presence. He clears his throat. The young man, a slick center parting, the hair on either side arranged precisely over his forehead in 2 limp, jagged-edged waves, which are mystifyingly motionless, looks up. "Half a sec," he says. He's wearing a lanyard around his neck, identifying him as Charles Crawford. The other librarian, a gaunt, severe-faced woman with 2 pairs of glasses hanging on chains round her neck, but none on her nose, ignores him. What can be so urgent that they can't speak to him? "How can I help?" asked Charles, finally turning away from the screen. Okay, what did you think of that? I thought it was a very simple and not particularly interesting scene, and that's just the luck of the draw, right? But the writing, I think, was fine, and I'd certainly... I guess this is the 3rd time I've read it. I read it twice before doing the video, and the first time I read it I wasn't really impressed at all. But the second time I realized I'd missed one detail that I thought just really captures Nick's character. When he's at the library, he starts rearranging the books and putting them in the correct order. Now, he was already seeming to be a real anal type, but that really captured, so I thought that was really interesting. That made me really more interested in Nick than I was otherwise. So he's not at the library for the books, so I'm curious what he's there for. He's disconcerted by the computers, so that makes me think that he's not a young man, but beyond that I don't really have a picture of who he is or what he's all about. And he's going to the library. I'm kind of curious why, but it's just kind of a... I think there's a couple sentences that are a little bit overloaded, and I had trouble reading them. They were just a little bit too much for my tongue to manage. The one about the guy's jagged-edged waves, that sentence defeated my tongue, and I think that's the fault of the sentence, but basically the writing is okay. So, that's pretty much all I got to say about book number 1. Book number 2 is really heavy. These are not ordinary parakeets, Hasnor. These are hill parakeets, Alexandrine parakeets, as the English sahibs say. The English had left more than 3 years ago, but Ishak let it pass. I know, he said. "I can tell an expert when I see one," said the stall-keeper in a most friendly manner. "Now, why not have this one? Only 2 rupees, and it will sing like an angel." "A male angel or a female angel?" said Ishak severely. The stall-keeper suddenly became obsequious. "Oh, you must forgive me, you must forgive me. People here are so ignorant, one can hardly bear to part with one's most promising birds. But for one who knows parakeets, I will do anything, anything. Have this one, Huznor." And he picked out one with a larger head, a male. Ishak held it for a few seconds, then placed it back in the cage. The man shook his head, then said, "Now, for a true fancier, what can I provide that is better than this? Is it a bird from Rudia district that you want? Or from the foothills in Horshana? They talk better than Minas." Ishak simply said, "Let's see something worth seeing." The man went to the back of the shop and opened a cage in which 3 little half-fledged birds sat huddled together. Ishak looked at them silently, then asked to see one of them. He smiled, thinking of parakeets he had known. His aunt was very fond of them, and had one who was still alive at the age of 17. "This one," he said to the man, "and you know by now that I will not be fooled about the price either." They haggled for a while. Until the money changed hands, the stall-keeper seemed a bit resentful. Then, as Ishak was about to leave, with his purchase nestled in his handkerchief, the stall-keeper said in an anxious voice, "Tell me how he is doing when you come by next time." "What do they call you?" asked Ishak. "Muhammad Ismail, Huzur. And how are you addressed?" "Ishak Khan." "Then we are brothers," beamed the stall-keeper. "You must always get your birds from my shop." "Yes, yes," agreed Ishak, and walked hurriedly away. This was a good bird he had got, and would delight the heart of young Tasneem. There's actually one more sentence on the bottom of that page, which is the beginning of the next chapter, but I think that what we've got is enough to go on, and the next sentence doesn't really add anything. Well, in sharp contrast to the book number 1, where the scene was kind of humdrum, this was really interesting, and I thought the writing was really lively, and I got a strong sense of Ishak, who's shopping for a parakeet for the young Tasneem. I don't know if Tasneem is a boy or a girl or anything about her, or him, obviously. The back and forth between the bird seller and Ishak was, I thought, really well done and quite comical. I know where this book's set, so it's stupid for me to pretend to be guessing, so I won't say anything, but I think you can kind of guess which part of the world the story's happening in. I really liked it. Yeah, it made me really want to read more. I loved the writing, actually. Good feeling about that one. And book number 3. Book number 3, the page 112 is blank, so the next page that does have some text on it is the beginning of chapter 6, which is a few pages later. A woman came in 3 days a week to do housework for Louisa Jepp. It was on one of these days that Mrs Hogg called at the cottage. Mrs Jepp, keeping her on the doorstep, said, "I cannot ask you to come inside, Mrs Hogg. My woman is all over the floors. Is it anything in particular?" "Perhaps this afternoon," Mrs Hogg said, and she was looking over Louisa's shoulder into the interior, right through to the green back garden. "No. This afternoon I'm going to see my grandson in hospital. Master Lawrence has had an accident." "Is it anything in particular, Mrs Hogg?" "I would like to inquire for Mr Lawrence." "That's kind of you. Master Lawrence is progressing. And, Miss Caroline, though she's more serious, I shall say you inquired." Louisa did not for the world suggest that Mrs Hogg might have anything further to say. "I have a message for Lawrence. That's why I came personally." "All the way from the north of England," stated Louisa. Mrs Hogg said, "I'm here for the day. From London." "Come round to the back, and we shall sit in the garden." It was a day of mild November light and sun. Louisa led the way among her pigeons across the small green patch to the bench in front of her loganberry bush. That was lovely. Both Mrs. Louisa Jepp and Mrs. Hogg, their personalities are very vivid to me just based on that one page, and I'm very curious about so much. What's the accident that Lawrence and Caroline had, and who is Caroline? Is that the granddaughter? How serious are their injuries? Who is Mrs. Hogg that's come all the way from London, who I can't really tell if Louisa Jepp knows her or just doesn't like her. Maybe just doesn't like her. So yes, this has really grabbed me. So much characterization being done so deftly in a few short lines of dialogue and description. I just think it's lovely. How clipped Louisa is. Is there anything in particular? Yeah, I love this. So how about you? I think you can probably guess my choices. I've actually changed mine around as I've read it out loud this time. I've switched number 1 and number 2. My first choice, the book that I'm most interested in, based on its page 112, is book number 3, which I just read to you, which is the debut novel by Muriel Spark, The Comforters. I just got this gorgeous Scottish edition in the mail a couple of weeks ago, 10 days ago. Somebody put a comment on my vlog with Leah about the driver's seat that Polygon, which is an imprint of Berlin Ltd. In Edinburgh, is republishing all of Muriel Spark's fiction, and this is number 1. So there's number 1, and it goes through. So there's 22 volumes, and they will all be published in these lovely hardcover editions this year. I think maybe about half of them are already available, but they're coming out, you know, a few each month. And I have decided I need them all. So this is The Comforters. And I'm really looking forward to doing another buddy read vlog collaboration of this with Leah of Hide and Seek in June, I believe. Is that right? Yeah, June. I thought that I had studied this at university. I did a modern British novel course as an undergrad, and I think I read it, but I have no memory of it. Oh no, now that I'm looking at I don't really read plot synopsis, so this is the very first time that I've actually read The Dust Jacket. The protagonist, she has a problem. She keeps hearing voices and the incessant tapping of typewriter keys, and she slowly realizes that she seems to be a character in a novel. Yes, I did study this, but I don't remember it. I just remember I loved it. So, this is the book number 3. This is my first choice. This is the one whose page 112 I really, really loved. But a very close second is book number 2, which is The Doorstopper to End All Doorstoppers. I believe it's one of the longest novels that's ever been printed in one volume in English. A Suitable Boy by Vikram Seth. And I loved its page 112 too, but upon reading them aloud this time, I think the Muriel Spark pulled slightly ahead. This was originally published in 1993, and it's obviously comes from India. Has anybody read it? Boy, I really want to read it. And I might be looking for some buddy readers, but probably this is going to be a 2019 read. I just don't think I'm going to get to it this year. Vikram Seth, I don't know what he's done recently, but he wrote a novel in verse called The Golden Gate, which I read in the early 1990s, and I don't remember anything about, so. But I've heard nothing really but good about this. This mammoth tome is about a mother's search for a suitable husband for her daughter Lata. So the story about this book is there is a Japanese bookshop near where I teach in Kichijoji on Tuesday mornings. About a month ago, I actually went inside for the first time, and they had like 3 English books, mostly art related or something, in the whole bookstore, but it was still really fascinating because of all the historical memorabilia and art prints and whatnot that were really fascinating. I put a bunch on Instagram. And it just occurred to me a couple of weeks ago that I should just stop by again, just for fun, had 5 minutes to kill. And they had a shelf full of English books, most of them hardcover novels. And the most expensive of any of them on the shelf was 500 yen, so that's $5. I got this for $5. Hardcover. I don't think it's first edition, but it doesn't matter. But it's just a beautiful hardcover. So it's not a book that I'm going to be carrying to work with me when it's a little bit sunned here, but it's still really in beautiful shape. And I actually got a stack of 5 books, maybe 4. I don't remember, but they're heavy. I had to carry them all around, all over Tokyo that day before I got them home. But I was so happy. And somewhat distant third, but I still have high hopes for this book, this is a fairly new novel, The Last of the Greenwoods by Claire Morale. And I first heard about this from Peg, the book prize addict. She talked about it. She enjoyed it very much. I don't remember if she had finished reading it or was in the middle of reading it when she brought it to my attention. I didn't know anything about the author, and the way she described it intrigued me. I think this maybe just was the victim of a rather lackluster page 112, but it didn't turn me off the book. So I'm still looking forward to trying it. But, you know, it's really not fair stacking a writer that nobody except Peg has ever heard of, Claire Morrell, against Vikram Seth and Spark. Not really fair, but these are 3 recent book hauls. So Claire Morrell was born in Exeter and now lives in Birmingham, where she works as a music teacher. She's published 6 novels before this, and I believe maybe Peg has read more than this. I'm still looking forward to reading it, but it was somewhat of a distant third choice. And The Last of the Greenwoods is about the Greenwood brothers, and yes, they are an elderly pair of brothers. Nick is one of the elderly pair. They live in a field in railway carriages, and they don't speak to one another. I don't know how many railway carriages there are, but I'll find out eventually. And one day they receive a letter from their sister, who they believed had been murdered in 1969. And that's all I read from the synopsis, but that was enough to pique my interest. I'm not going to do a page 112 on these next 2, so I'm just going to show you 2 of the other books that I got at that Japanese bookstore where it was all Japanese books, like secondhand books. And these 2 are books that I love. Some of the favorite novels that I've read in the past several years that I read on ebook and on audiobook, and I now have gorgeous hardcovers. Are you ready? Wolf Hall and Bring Up the Bodies in gorgeous hardcovers. I don't think the hardcovers match. I think this is part of a different publisher from this, so I don't care, but they're just beautiful condition. $5 each. So I was so happy to get those. So what would have been your first picks? Maybe you agreed with me, maybe you didn't. I'll be very curious to hear, and I'll probably have another page 112 book haul for you in the near future. Thanks for watching.